Oh, there we are. Hello, hello. Is this working? Hope I haven't fucked up something with the audio. Playback. No, my audio works. I can't hear you. Um, Hello, everybody. How are we doing? We're gonna be
Pretty
talking
good.
with. Oh, did I hear you there?
Yeah, I believe so.
Ah, sweet, sweet. How are you doing, my friend?
Pretty good. How are you?
Yeah, it's an interesting time. I'm working on some of my last assignments before I start my thesis for my masters, and uh,
Nice. For
and
history
once
masters?
I'm doing international relations, I'm doing security studies right now.
Nice.
Yeah, so I also got a beautiful chicken in front of me and some potatoes because
Nice.
I didn't catch lunch early enough, so now I'm just nibbling. You know, it's really fucked up because you were one of the people that I caught on to pretty early in the war, and I followed you and I saw the stuff you were talking about. And yeah, it seems that the attention economy, when it comes to reporting on this war, tends to skew towards really shit sources, man.
Just a little bit.
Y-
There's a very. It skews towards the histrionic and sensational instead of like I don't know, Rochan. It was like
Yeah,
it's not. There's like it's weird, right? Because there's a bunch of people who have like an artist level focus on the war, right? And they're very careful about what they say, but everything it eh, the sensational tends to win out.
yeah, no, it's really weird, and you'll see people with pretty wild credentials. Some like former generals, like military guys, that will say shit that absolutely blows my mind. And every time I see stuff like this, I'm like, okay, I felt underqualified to make strong statements when this war started, and I've been building my confidence slowly by realizing that a lot of people are just not that much better.
Exactly.
It's so fucked up. Like most people are just like saying shit and coasting on their credentials and like do you know like the what's it called, the tractor guy who kept saying that like bulldozers would work on the uh
Trent Terlenko or
oh
Tyrelenko.
and Tyrelenko, yeah. uh oh my god, Trent, I've made fun of so much, man. I don't let up on that dude.
He
I don't know.
deserves it.
So what has been going on with you? I see you posted an article recently. Do you want to introduce yourself to the stream, and also like tell us what's going on with you lately?
Lately, been trying to stand up a little consultancy thing,
Mhm.
but we need money.
I mean, sounds reasonable. Like those things aren't easy to get off the ground, especially if you're working.
Yep. Uh,
What was your
let's.
recent article about? It was nuclear
Ooh,
stuff.
yeah, the various defenses against nuclear weapons,
Mm.
and it's sort of a vague, not a vague overview, but like an overview of what those are, broadly speaking, and how effective the current crop of them are.
All right. I've seen that you have a lot of takes that a lot of people consider controversial when it comes to nuclear weapons. Um,
Yeah,
so
just a little bit.
yeah, I could give you the floor to talk about that a little bit if you like. Because a lot of
Oh,
people have misconceptions about nuclear weapons and don't really study them, and like the whole like focus on nuclear weapons has died down since the Cold War.
I like we could talk about them. They're not as interesting as we tend to believe. Like if you just throw open, I don't know. I'll pull up a nuke map since everybody knows what that is.
Hmm. Oh
You
yeah, I
pull
know
up
nuke
like a
map. Yeah, let me open it. What do I have here? Yeah, a nuke map. 1 second. A lot of
uh
people had like basically busted the website when the war had begun in Ukraine, because everyone was like fucking worried about it. Uh,
yeah.
Now people have adopted the attitude, hey, nuclear weapons, nuclear weapons, who cares? Like,
we always ping pong in between the two, which is
yeah.
never ideal because, like, technically, Putin in particular could use nukes. He probably won't, but that doesn't. You're gonna really go to accept it probably for something or for weapons that could potentially destroy cities, entire cities in an instant. That's a little bit silly,
Hmm. Yeah, it's
though.
I think we do have this kind of attitude where we believe that it is just not going to happen, or we can't even imagine it really. Like nuclear weapons kind of escape the imagination, even though they have been used in combat in the past.
Yep.
Right now, like we live in a society that this seems like this very far off possibility, unlike what it used to be back in the Cold War.
Uh, it, Actually, it's sort of weird, right? Because technically, at a few points, we were closer to nuclear Armageddon in this war than we ever were during the Cold War.
Really?
Yeah, like at Zaporizhia, or Zaporizhia.
Yeah, the
You
nuclear
know
power plant. Yeah.
when the Russians were first assaulting it, right? Uh, there was some whoever was in charge of the battalion tactical group, the Russian battalion tactical group. He was essentially, if he'd chosen to use howitzers against the Ukrainian forces defending the plant, he might have caused the nuclear meltdown several times worse than Chernobyl.
Yeah, because it's like, isn't it like also much bigger? Um,
Yeah, like 8 times the size of it.
and it's also on the Dnieper, which, like, I
Yeah.
think, like, when discussing like scales of nuclear catastrophe, being on the rivers about as bad as it could get. A lot of people like were talking seriously, like fucking, oh, who's that guy? Oh, who's that guy who was suggesting that like NATO troops should drop and secure the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant?
Oh fuck.
Uh,
Was
David,
it the
what's his name? Squirrel guy. Wait,
yeah,
fuck.
yeah, it was the secret squirrel guy,
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
his name is.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, technically that was possible, right? But like, that's just a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean the thing is like the risks you're running like doing something like this are just not worth it for whatever potential outcome. And even if your troops like successfully land there, you've landed them basically in the middle of nowhere with no good way of supplying them without entering the war properly, you know? Like you're going to have to send in the air force if you're going to do something like that. You can't just drop them in and tell them to enjoy their holiday in like fucking Energodar. It's not gonna happen.
Mhm.
You have to secure the air. You have to establish supply lines to them. People, I don't understand how someone who like was in a war already doesn't understand some of like the like really basic requirements of establishing something, be it a perimeter, be it like control over a city, like all these things. You require stuff. You require food, water, electricity. I mean, okay, water and electricity isn't the problem where they are, but you still require like ammunition, like artillery shells. If you're gonna have artillery in there, depends on the size of the perimeter. You can just like up and do shit like that.
Uh, well, you know what they say, like God sorted it all out, right?
Yeah, go let them in there and let them use their ingenuity and bravado to materialize some ammunition. It is a quite an interesting um, proposition. But see, the reason I brought you here today is to discuss. Let me bring up live UA map or something. I don't. It doesn't matter. We're talking rough outlines anyway. Map. I brought you here today to talk a bit about what we could be looking at in terms of the upcoming Ukrainian offensive that turned from like a spring offensive into now a summer offensive. It seems like we're at the precipice of it, and there's a lot of discussions when it comes to like the reserves that Ukraine has to conduct this offensive, the fortifications, the direction in which it could go. So, since there are so many opinions floating around, what would you say is like your take on this whole thing? Like, what are your big expectations?
So my expectations are probably a lot wilder than what most analysts are suggesting, simply because Russia's force has been severely degraded just
Mm.
everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even that local offensive in Zaporizhia, just I think what yesterday or today, blew through a bunch of Russian lines, and it was like only assaulted with like one battalion. So their defenses are evidently dog shit, and that was like a sort of straight on attack assault, right?
Mm-hmm.
But with the shaping operations currently in play in the far south and in Belgorod, uh, it's pretty clear that the Ukrainian intelligence services are trying to pull Russian forces away from their main focus of attack, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's
I have seen a bunch about
probably
the Belgorod stuff.
so like if you uh I will drop this link into the chat.
All right, let me see. In our chat or in the chat of
Uh,
on
I will
Twitch?
use our chat since
Hmm.
my not logged on to Twitch.
Sure, sure, sure. All right, let me see. Oh yeah, I know Jomini. He took a pretty long pause for a little while. Um, but yeah, it big mucho texto. So do you want to give us the lowdown of what we are talking about here?
Yeah, yeah. If you zoom in to the middle there,
Uh-huh.
uh,
So are we talking in Sloviansk Kramatorsk or further south?
still in the vicinity of Bakhmut.
Mhm. Okay. I see
Uh,
Bilohorivka here. Okay, Bakhmut. Yeah, I see Bakhmut.
this map was made before the Battle of Bakhmut ended, so
Yes.
the Wagner elements have pulled out, and they were probably replaced with the VDV and mechanized units that were or rushed in to plug the gap.
Hmm.
But you see how it's sort of a salient jutting out uh, from Bakhmut into Ukrainian lines.
Yeah, it is essentially flanked between two positions, the ones in Toretsk and the other ones around Siversk. So it is a bit of a bulge in general, and especially now that they control Bakhmut, it is a bulge into Ukrainian lines. I guess it's also why the Russian like Telegram people were talking about potentially the Russians going for Siversk next to like fix their flanks essentially to not have this protruding threat in their flanks. Because really, the only thing that's helping the Russians is, Klishivka in the south and basically nothing in the north. Like all this area in the north, uh, all the way to Popasna, all these places. Maybe Soledar is useful, but this is just they just have to fight uphill, the Ukrainians. But apart from that, they don't have any like huge barriers to help them keep. Yeah. So.
Uh, yeah, exactly, right?
Hmm.
And if you take a look at which units are where along the lines, right? For I guess everybody's not totally familiar on the, I guess NATO symbology, or yeah, actually, he uses a mixture of Soviet and NATO symbology.
All
Well,
right.
actually, I can't remember. Okay, never mind. It's technically it's adversarial NATO symbology and normal NATO symbology. Uh,
Yeah, I think
but
the normal rectangles are the NATO symbology, the normal ones, and the basically squares that are changed a bit to the 45 degrees are the enemy symbology. And I mean, the thing is, like, I'm not 100% like knowledgeable of all the symbols, but I do know that like a normal cross is like infantry. If they have a little triangle under the cross, for example, like here, Death Mountain is mountaineers. When you see a oblong like circle type deal, it's usually mechanized or tank. I think mechanized is when it has an X in the circle, right? Um,
ye,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yes, yes.
And motorized, you have the circles underneath the xed out. Anyway, it's a bit hard to describe if you're not like looking at them. But
Yes.
yeah, so um, do the Ukrainians right now have a bunch of like units like that to go on the offensive against Bakhmut? Do you expect like an attack in that direction?
Yes, because there are from I guess from the not even from the leaks. We know that there are at least nine NATO equipped brigades, not divisions,
Hmm.
that haven't seen combat. Then there's another what 11 Ukrainian equipped units. I think what is Zelensky said there's 20 total, right? Prepared to go on the offensive, who've
20
been I guess
brigades.
rotated out of the line. Yeah, 20 brigades total. And if you look at I guess the okay, so one a single X, right? Either indicates, well, actually, usually it indicates a brigade, right?
Yeah, and then like three is a battalion.
Three is a regiment.
Three is a regiment. Yeah, sorry. Three is a regiment, two is a battalion. Right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yes. I'm technically brigades and regiments are sort of interchangeable depending on the military. Uh, I guess the Russian military, in particular, switched towards a brigade composition, right?
yeah. Yeah, they've
But
completely abandoned like the battalion tactical group kind of like composition, right? Like they just gave up
oh,
on
yeah,
that.
yeah. Initially during the war, they tried to. Oh, actually, they didn't even. Technically, they were supposed to be fighting under the I guess organization of brigade or battalion tactical groups, but that fell apart immediately because they didn't have enough manpower,
Hmm.
and then they lost a bunch of equipment. So now they're sort of sitting in a weird place, right, where they have inadequate equipment but enough manpower.
Yeah, they kind of
Uh,
inversed the beginning of the war, where they had all the equipment in the world but lost it in the most dumb way anyone could imagine, like sending it in unsupported by adequate infantry, and then losing like columns of shit in, in the suburbs of Kiev for no reason.
exactly. Uh, actually, along those lines, if you scroll to the scroll up a bit
Hmm.
on the map,
Sure.
the when you see bars, right?
The bars
Those
are
are
the Russian units.
yeah, Russian reservist units or Russian reserve battalions.
Mm. Yeah, here.
If you have the two lines on the top are it's indicator for battalion scale units or battalion level units.
Hmm.
The orange are units from what are we calling them? Zimbabwe or
Zimbabwe.
uh, LDNR Trea.
Oh my god. Yeah, no, it is kind of like Russia has having its own mini third world military to fight alongside it.
Exactly. Technically, their units are being propped up with conscripts and reservists from regular Russia, but the t originally, right, the LDNR Treya units were, I guess, decent enough. They weren't, their equipment was shittier, right? But
Shooter
they were
equipment,
at least
but more combat experience, having like fought for such a long time in Ukraine, like what, almost
exactly,
80 years.
exactly, right? So now those units are all uniformly rather poor, qualitatively speaking, right? Uh,
That makes
so
sense because like they lost a lot of good troops in the fighting, and they never actually received good equipment back. Maybe some LDPR, I think mostly LPR troops received T90Ms, but the thing is like Russia hasn't been like perfect exactly in like allocating equipment based on need. They tend to allocate shit based on reputation, and whoever has pull internally to get better equipment, or if something becomes a scandal. Say someone like goes on social media and says, "Oh, we don't have boots, we don't have coats, we don't have shit because our like staff officer just sold a bunch of shit to other units. Can we please like get get stuff?" So
exactly,
the allocation system is absolutely mind-boggling when you
it's
take into account the size of the Russian army.
it's you could say it's almost a touch schizophrenic, right? Because technically,
Yeah,
we tend to think that the Russians are out of equipment. They're not actually.
they're not.
They're
No,
just
but they're
they're
giving it in
logistic.
such an ass backwards way that
Exactly.
you just have to question, like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I don't think they believe in themselves anymore, really. So that's why this they're not even bothering to fix the shit that goes wrong. It's like the, I don't know, something that I would like say, like, let's go in and whatever happens happens, like mentality. It's like staying in the war out of inertia at this point.
Exactly. Especially the Russian army or the general staff, right? They've sort of just visibly given up.
Yeah.
That's why. Actually, this is sort of a critical point, right? Why Wagner getting pulled out of the line, or Wagner pulling itself out of the line, is so obviously problematic for Russia, right? Because
In
Wagner's
Bakhmut
units,
specifically.
not just Bakhmut, in general, right? Because the Wagner units are like the only units that were making any progress. They were doing it, taking a lot of casualties, right? But they were actually gaining ground.
Yeah, they were. I mean, pretty clearly. Like everyone was discussing Bakhmut day to day when it was when they started actually like making progress there. When was it? Like in basically December is when they started like actively like going for it, like with
Yeah,
actual gusto. They lost
yeah,
a lot
but
of
like
people there, but kind of so did the Ukrainians. It wasn't like a perfect situation for Ukraine, but they still like came out looking not bad at all, like in their defense of the city.
the TDF and the regular units fighting alongside them did a phenomenal job, right?
Hmm.
They sort of single-handedly, not really single-handedly, collectively took the strongest Russian unit. Because you have to bear in mind, technically, there's a qualitative hierarchy of operational and tactical competence, right?
Uh
Uh,
huh.
Originally, the VDV and the Russian Special Service units, right, the SF or soft units, were at the top echelons, right? But the SF got mauled, right? So they're sort of
Yeah.
just fighting in special in opportunistic cases. And the VDV got mauled too, but they're still in the field, like the units that actually Wagner and Bakhmut is getting replaced with VDV units,
Hmm.
but the VDV can't really do all that much on its own because its equipment is not exactly made for functioning offensively.
No,
Like BMDs are basically,
they have all those BMDs, like
yeah,
essentially equipment
BMDs.
meant to like hold an area until the regulars arrive.
Yeah, BMDs are basically pieces of shit, right? They're just
Mm,
aluminum tin cans
absolutely.
with cannons. They're basically the Russian equivalent of an M113, but upgunned slightly.
Yeah, they have the 30 millimeters or 20s. What do they have? 30s, I think, right? 30 millimeter
Yeah, I think
autocannons.
it's 30 millimeters. 30 millimeter cannons.
Man, it still bothers me that like M113s have been the main thing being sent to supply like Ukrainian like mechanized formations. Like what? Why? Why not Bradleys? You have a lot of them in America.
It was actually it's very awkward, right? Because technically the U.S. has like 6,000 Bradleys.
Yeah,
Uh,
something insane like that.
but if you the DoD is very they won't go out like openly and say this necessarily, but the Army in particular, it wants to have the ability to double its force composition in the event of a hot war, right? So the units that it currently has, they can presumably take 100% casualties and still be able to field the same army that it has, right?
So
So once you,
they're thinking
yeah,
about China.
yeah, against China, Russia, even Iran or North Korea,
Hmm.
they want to be able to have a large hedge so they can absorb casualties.
Okay, fair enough. But like, in what scenario would they ever be able to take that kind of casualties? Like, especially
Uh,
considering where the army is and where its equipment is. Like, it doesn't make that much sense to me.
realistically, there is realistically there isn't really a scenario, right?
Yeah.
Uh, because like if there's a war in the Pacific, right? They would be used to reinforce Taiwan, or they'd be used to reinforce Korea or South Korea, right? But the
Yes.
South Korean army itself is already massive, right? So if the army has to deploy a lot of guys, well, the situation's already pretty well fucked.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. Like the way the Americans expect to fight in like a war in the Pacific. Nowadays, they would mostly like depend on the ground troops of their allies.
exactly.
So they wouldn't be expected to like mass mobilize in America because let's be real, like I don't think the Americans like really want something like this. By the Americans, I mean not the leadership. Like regular Americans haven't been subjected to any kind of like mass mobilization since when?
Since
Since
Vietnam.
since Vietnam, and the experience of Vietnam wasn't exactly ideal. Um,
Uh, yeah, yeah. Actually, it's Vietnam's a weird case. I know we're getting off track a bit,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but we uh, it, there's sort of a perception in the U.S. that the draft was terrible, and nobody likes it because draftees died in large numbers in Vietnam and everything was awkward, right?
Hmm.
But and people like to there's a popular conception because Americans don't actually know their history all too well, that we got rid of the draft because it worked terribly in Vietnam. In practice, most of the casualties in Vietnam were volunteers, right? The overwhelming majority of them. Draftees were usually reserved in rear echelon positions, so they could actually be substituted. Well, so other volunteers infantry, right? Infantry units could be pushed forward to do hard fighting.
Exactly. I mean,
So
this is usually what happens when in the early stages of mobilization of any country for any war, because you don't necessarily trust all the people that are going to be mobilized are going to have the same motivation to fight as volunteers. So you say, okay, let's pull all these volunteers instead of having them drive trucks or like repair shit in the back, push them forward, like to make up the teeth in the tooth to tail ratio. So what usually you do when you first get like reservists or like conscripts or whatever, when you get people like involuntarily into the army, you first outfit your tail. Usually
yeah,
it is the
exactly,
last reserve to push people who are conscripted in the front line.
exactly. And uh, well, yeah, ironically enough, we expected that to happen with Russia,
Hmm.
but the Russians sort of just dragged everybody forward as soon as they conscripted them. Especially if we all remember the Ukrainian push in the north around Kharkiv.
Kharkiv offensive.
Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
the fuck, uh, not the offensive towards the Oskol River.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know what you're talking about. It was really really interesting what happened there with Kharkiv, and like the Ukrainians went on the offensive not expecting much. They had like 10,000 men going on the offensive there, 10, 15,000, and what they realized is that front was empty. There was like
You just
there were like 3,000 guys just kind of chilling in and around what was it, fucking Balaklia, and then they got
yeah,
completely overwhelmed, and the Ukrainians were able to run all the way to Kupiansk. The thing is that when they crossed the Oskil River, the Russians started to panic, and they sent forward the people that they had like conscripted, not conscripted, sorry, like the reservists that they had conscripted. Yeah, they sent them forward to stabilize the line in front of Svatov and like Kremina. They fought for Liman, but then they still got pushed behind the Zerebets, I think. Is that the other river?
yep,
Uh,
yep,
yeah. So the interesting thing is that like they sent these reservists in with like 2 or 3 days of training, like nothing. But they still like managed to slow down the Ukrainians just like with sheer mass.
yeah.
And ever since then, they've like gotten the idea that oh yeah, it's not that bad an idea to like send your reservists forward and have them sit there and be trained by gunfire.
It's it's a mixed bag, of course.
Yeah.
Not really. That's very, very bad. Don't do that. Just in general. But
Yeah,
it's very
no.
funny from your perspective.
It's this meme, right? That like the Americans kind of have been used to fighting like in the most ideal circumstances, and what I usually like to say is that like, oh my friend, people will keep fighting when things get so much worse. Like it's like you can never underestimate just how bad shit can get before people stop fighting. Like like you guys have been fighting like bespoke war in the past like 25 years, 30 years, 40 years, however long. Like this this shit is like what it usually is like. It feels like it shows us like a real time understanding of just how shitty war is most of the time.
It's the worst part of this all right is technically we like to think we're starting to think that the Russian army is just falling apart, right?
Hmm.
Like that it's dog shit and it's bad because they're getting their asses kicked, whatever, right?
Yep.
Still, on paper and demonstrably, it's still the second strongest army in the world, right?
Yeah, it is fucked up when you think about it in that sense. And of course, like if we like removed all like political considerations, right? Let's like if we completely ignored all of the political finagling that the Kremlin did. Let's say we replace the whole in this fantasy world, we replace the whole leadership with like a determined, competent, and fanatical like government that could mobilize the Russian population to its maximum. Russia could still stay in the game for years. The thing is that
Yeah.
like is just we don't really know what like what their political like atmosphere is like and how it will develop over the next years. And it seems that like even though they feel like a defeat in this war could be disastrous for them, they still haven't decided to like uh just like let go and go all in, like literally. By all in, I don't mean all in with what they have now, but genuinely like mobilize a war economy, start like building factories, like going in like okay, we're going to have bread rations and all of the resources of the state we're gonna go towards like building a bigger army, because Russia could technically do that if like they declared war and did a bunch of other shit, but they seem extremely reluctant. to like push in further because they don't want to like do this and lose as well afterwards. Like it's kind of like they've almost accepted that they have lost already, but they also don't want to pull out. They're in this weird limbo at the moment.
Exactly. I guess that's sort of getting at getting that we can sort of draw that back to the counteroffensive or the looming Ukrainian counteroffensive,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
There's 20 fresh brigades that are prepared to attack, right?
Hmm.
And if you, I guess, if you would go back to the Germany map for a second,
Sure. Let me pull
uh,
that up.
it, you,
It's yeah,
it,
it's
the those little circles above the unit indicators, right? Those are, I guess, Germany's guesses, right? Germany, I'm pretty sure he's a staff officer in the army or U.S. Army,
hmm
so this is why the quality of his analysis is pretty good. Uh, those are roughly his, I guess, estimates of the status of various Russian units, gleaned from local news sources, Russian telegram, uh, journal articles, etc., etc. Not journal articles per se, but like live journal articles, right?
Oh, so you say that like the green, yellow, and red is like status of units and what the condition they're in?
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. And if you notice to the north around Lysychansk to Kremina, most of those units are either are reservist units, right?
So
So
yeah, around Kremina, here, Horivka, yeah,
those
yeah,
those units are soft, right? They're very touchy, right?
yeah.
Those are infantry units that are at best motorized, probably not very well motorized, because the Russians are sort of rushing them to the front. Uh, all of those red circles suggest that their status is very poor, and since they're mobilized units, that's probably accurate. If there's a solid offensive on the part of the Ukrainians, they're not going to be very useful, right?
Hmm.
Ukrainian units are just going to blow straight through them. They're not going to be very. The Russians aren't going to be able to use them to reinforce gaps in the line. Uh, and if you look down at the orange units, right? The orange units are units from Zimbabwe and I guess LDNR Triumph.
Those are also like yellow and red, most of
Yeah,
them.
most of them are also extremely worn down, even if they've been topped off with reinforcements from, I guess, the Russian reserve system.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, the only units on this front that are of any quality whatsoever are the VDV units, right? Those are the little airborne units a bit south of Bakhmut who are replacing Wagner. Uh,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So like the yeah, yeah. Okay, I see these two, 51st and the 137th. Uh, part of the
yes,
106th, like VDV.
exactly.
Hmm.
And since they're going to be stuck in Bakhmut, they're probably going to be effectively fixed in place, right? Because it's hard to defend cities, but it's even harder to like move in and out of them, right?
Yeah.
Because once you're in a city and urban terrain, it's hard to get units moving because, well, A, they're safer in buildings. B, when you just their cities are canalizing, right? There's only fixed ways in and out because buildings are determinative, right? If a
Yeah.
Ukrainian drone spots like a battalion trying to move down the street, uh, it's exposed to artillery fire.
And that's why
Or
you move in and out fairly slowly. Like you take your time, you try to
stay in cover.
stay in cover, and also make the your enemy think that you haven't really moved much out. Um, that's how, I mean, that's how Ukraine withdrew from Bakhmut. They kept signaling, "Oh, like we're gonna fight to the end in Bakhmut," and slowly they kept pulling stuff out. It was the I mean, the Russians also demonstrated that they could do this with Kherson,
Or
right?
son. Yeah,
So like like pulling out as much stuff as you can while signaling that you're still there and still fighting, and then just like going as quickly as possible for the last leg of your withdrawal.
exactly.
Um, and that's the way you minimize losses. But the thing is that if you're caught off guard, uh, it's gonna be much harder to do that quickly without casualties. It was also shown like when remember when the Ukrainians were leaving from Lysychansk? Um, there, they didn't have the opportunity to do it as slowly as they wanted, and they did lose a bunch of equipment in not only in Lysychansk but also like um, they took casualties trying to move through the streets when the Russians controlled Liman. Going over from like Lysychansk to Siversk was actually quite a painful trek because they didn't have the time to organize it the way they wanted to.
Yeah, they were very. They only had a few roads. The roads were covered by artillery fire.
Yeah.
Took, I don't want to say significant losses.
No,
I
no,
should
no. It
say
wasn't. It wasn't anything insane. It was just like that
it
they
was just
didn't have the time to do it the way they would have wanted to.
yeah. They had to leave everything heavy behind.
Yeah, I mean, it seems I don't know. Like Sasha Todorov has been saying that like it's almost impossible nowadays to actually encircle anything because of how quick units can actually move when they have to. Um,
Yes,
it
but
makes sense. I mean, let's be real. Like almost there isn't anything that isn't motorized anymore. In
true.
effect.
But it's sort of you also have to sort of be a bit cautious there, right?
Hmm.
Because the way NATO units are trained to fight, they are NATO units and units of NATO training. Uh, like say, I'll use the Turkish military as an example, right?
Hmm.
Because the last military to conduct a normal, or the last NATO military to conduct a normal combined arms offensive would be the Turkish military, right?
When they
And
attacked in North Syria.
yeah, in Rojava,
Yeah.
they pushed, I think, like one division down the road uh, to fuck. It's
They tried to do this like 100 or so kilometer buffer zone, right?
uh,
Or less
I'm
than
not sure if it was
100.
100
Sorry, not
kilometers, but it
100.
was
Forgive me.
quite large.
It was a
It-
large-ish buffer zone. Yeah, you can see it
it-
here.
yeah, that one, the big black one there.
Hmm.
Uh, Around not the X. I can't remember exactly the city. Actually, I'll pull up live UA. Oh yeah, I already have it up. Uh, so yeah, Tel Abyad. I don't remember it being called that, but I'm going to presume that I'm just an idiot.
Tel Aviv.
Uh, yeah, Tel Abyad in the north. Yeah, there.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Uh, when they initially began their offensive there, right? The Turks punched down extremely quickly, expecting a fair amount of resistance.
yeah. Hmm.
Because the Kurds, the YPG, had built up a lot of defensive lines, right? The Kurdish military is, well, I guess the Syrian Kurdish military has well north of like 50,000 guys. They're NATO equipped, or US equipped in particular, extremely well trained. They are phenomenal soldiers, right?
Yeah.
So the Turks expected a lot of resistance, so they punched south and immediately cut off the roads. Uh, and this is over the course of like one day. I don't want to. I'm trying to figure out how to measure it.
The length. I mean,
Uh,
you can sometimes guess, like you can't expect like anything with substantial heavy equipment to move more than like 35 kilometers or so. Um, I think. Wait. Yeah. There's the tools on the side. Um, where is it?
yeah, I just tried the tool.
So
Live
that's
UA.
30 kilometers. Yep. That's how long how deep the 712 road runs. Up until you hit the junctions where the Kurdish units are holding. Because it seems,
Yep.
yeah.
They got to the board. Actually, technically, during their offensive, they didn't even get to the deconfliction line or the current deconfliction line.
Hmm.
The first phase, right? They punched south about 15 kilometers in the first day. And I mean, technically, the circumstances are different because it's basically desert there, but the principle is sort of the same. NATO units or NATO trained units, they move hard and they move fast. Hey, Embiid, yeah, this is in fact trap ward.
Yes,
Uh,
yes. It is indeed a long-awaited crossover. Because Beat has enjoyed the conversations on Twitter for quite a while. Um, he's the number one conversation appreciator on this stream. Yeah,
Uh,
so you were saying that the NATO units move fast and they move hard.
yeah, they move fast, they move hard, and they cut off supply lines, right?
They,
Which is
isn't it kind of how like the Americans did in Iraq, where they kept moving around like any type of strong point and just choking them off from supplies,
exactly
not
right.
not even bothering fighting for anything.
Yes, exactly. So when you're fighting against like a NATO unit, you have to sort of operate under the presumption that you're going to be cut off. Um, I know there's a bunch of there is a very the, the Soviet school of thought, right, or the Soviet legacy school of thought, is a bit more deliberate in its approach towards taking ground. I don't want to. I can't really say which is more effective because
The deep
it
battle
technically the
doctrine.
Soviet approach works. Yeah, the Soviet doctrine works. The NATO doctrine works, right? But if you're fighting against NATO doctrine, you have to expect different things than you would against Soviet doctrine.
But do you expect the Ukrainians to go on the offensive with the like with a more NATO like clean NATO doctrine? Because I don't. I think that like you know the
It's
same way that Rohan has been saying that they have a lot of Soviet officers. I feel like they're going. It's going to be kind of something new in a sense. It's going to be a little bit what they've learned in this war, what their officers know from back in the day, and what their soldiers have learned in all the NATO training schools. So I don't
exactly,
think we can expect anything like very clear. It's kind of like a wait and see situation with the
exactly,
Ukrainian offensive.
100%, right?
Hmm.
Uh, but this is sort of gets, I guess, problematic for Russia's case, right? Because if depending on how much DNA the Ukrainian planners, or how much NATO DNA Ukraine's plans will have, right? The units in the center, the bulge there, right, around Bakhmut, those are Russia's best units in the area. And just the scale of the bombardment along the line, right? It's going to be fixing Russian forces in place, right? So they're going to have a hard time shifting reinforcements to offset their very squishy flanks around Bakhmut.
Hmm.
So with I guess 20 battalion, it was 20 brigades, right? They could punch. Actually, I see probably two possible axes of attack so far, right? There's how should I?
I mean, as I mean, I've like this direction when discussing it, it isn't like the main thing you could hope to do, I think, if you're Ukraine, is to take like surround or like cut off Bakhmut, force them to withdraw from there, and move back all the way from Svitlodarsk to Popasna to Lysychansk. I feel like this is more that you can hope for because after that you run into hills and rivers and just like it's not that it is too difficult to move over them. It's just that it takes time, and time is what the Russians can like need in order to like maneuver things in place. That's why I don't think this is like the best direction. And the other thing that I'm considering when I'm making this assessment is okay, like won't the Russians notice like a really a buildup of like 10 or 15 or 20 brigades in one area? I feel like it will be like kind of obvious. It's hard to hide such a big force because it's also like
True.
a very narrow front.
The problem, true, which sort of gets to another problem, right?
Hmm.
There's when you have 20 brigades, right? You can afford to go on two offensives at once, essentially,
Oh, in two
because you
areas,
have
yeah,
like a
yeah.
lot of slack. Say if you could have a dual assault from, I guess, towards what is it? No. Novo Luhansk and Popasna, right, to cut off the grouping of competent Russian soldiers. Uh, cut off, I guess, cut off the competent Russian force grouping in the vicinity of Bakhmut, while the other Ukrainian units are pressing on the other competent Russian soldiers in the north, in the south, to fix them in place. And I will pull up another map
Give me just a
really
second.
quickly.
I'll be right back because I have, unfortunately, like, kind of like, my hands are a little dirty and I don't want to handle my mouse. I need to wash them, and
Yeah, that's
I'll start drawing arrows on the map as every
okay.
every hobbyist likes to do.
Yes, it's the vibe. But since yeah, Exo, uh, I think they're my other main, I guess, zone. I'm gonna throw. Actually, I have to log on to Twitch first. I don't remember what my Twitch account is. I have one, but they got rid of the Google login, so I have to actually remember what it is. Ooh, okay. Create.
There we are. All right. But yeah, so like the attack you're describing here, let me make it blue so we are describing Ukrainian units. So it's something along the lines of like using Siversk as a base to move towards like Popasna and Hirske Zolote, like that area, and then also using like recapturing like Kudrimovka and Klishivka in that area, crossing the Bakhmutske River, and then like moving towards Svitlodarsk, right? Like this is what you're discussing.
Yeah, because basically the Russians are. If you, I guess, I don't want to say you're gonna sound like an economist here when you say in the grand scheme of things, right? The
Hmm.
Russians technically sort of have themselves in a kettle with some of their best units in the area, and
Yeah,
to the
and
north, like
with flanks that are like made of paper at the moment.
exactly.
Hmm.
So they're extremely vulnerable,
Yeah, I mean,
and
not to be
in
cliche, but this does like basically every like 50-year-old like boomer World War II nerd would tell you, oh, this is exactly like Stalingrad, bro.
exactly right. Oh, ooh, and I sent another map to you in the chat,
Hmm. Give me a sec.
another Germany map. Uh, so
Yeah, let me open that one up.
in the south, right?
Yeah.
What access do I have to have attack to on to fuck Putin's dad? Um, I'll have to find where Putin's dad's buried. He's probably buried in St. Petersburg because that's where Putin grew up. Wait, actually, I can't remember. Did Putin know his dad? I think
I
he was
don't know
raised by
that
his
much.
mom.
The only thing I know about Putin is that he used to be like a KGB guy. Um,
Big
sorry.
KGB guy and a mama's boy, I believe.
Yeah, I that's what I don't know that much about Putin, and like honestly, like
Well,
I tend to
he's also
find, oh, yeah,
Putin's also autistic. A little recognized fact.
all
Uh,
right.
when political scientists and other such experts, uh, actually, this is an observation by a fun observation from the U.S. Office of Net Assessment. They
Hmm.
contracted out a report to a bunch of psychologists who study leaders and they conduct assessments, right?
Yeah.
And one of the studies that they produced, right, concluded. They didn't say it conclusively, right? They hedged themselves, but the evidence they presented was pretty insurmountable, right? Putin's sort of flagrantly autistic, right?
Uh huh.
That's not like a bad thing because
No, we
historically,
stand our
uh,
autistic kings and queens.
exactly, right? They tend to be A, smarter, B, more focused, C, just not stupid in general compared to like normal people, right? Like they're not like Liz Truss who spent her entire prime ministership
Oh my
taking
god.
selfies for Instagram.
she got bitten by a cabbage. There's there's no salvaging that. Like being remembered forever as like probably the most incompetent prime minister to ever bless the UK.
That's a hard one. That's
Yeah.
a hard one. Since it's
I
the
mean,
UK.
if I had to guess with Putin is like yeah, you've seen him like fail to do like handshakes. There's like some videos of him like trying to go for the handshake and like people ignore him and he just kind of doesn't know what to do. Like he
Exactly,
moves the
right?
arms around a bit. It's like okay, like just visible confusion.
Yeah, yeah. And and that's like a it technically well there are like two, I guess, little outfits, right, that study the psychology of leaders, right?
Hmm.
One is the CIA, and there's another like subset of experts who do it independently. For I guess not really independently, they do it for corporations. Yeah, yeah. Putin is probably actually autistic. That's not like a slight. That's just like a diagnosis that you. Okay,
All right,
psychiatrists don't like to diagnose things when they can't like meet a patient, but
that's
when
fair.
you
Yeah, I
look at
mean, you won't ever get Putin to sit down with you for a psychological assessment.
yeah, yeah. Putin. Oh, I want to say Putin's a Russian boss, right?
Jesus.
He's more of an Aspie, to be honest.
What?
Putin's a bit of an Aspie, Asperger's, but
Ah,
not like a high degree, but like a very high functioning degree in the clinical terminology.
all right. So how do you think this plays into whatever is about to happen?
Fuck. I can't remember how we got to the
Yeah, you were
discussion of
trying to
leader.
connect it to something. You kind of got lost into trying to say how we know Putin is the way he is.
Uh, well, he's probably not going to give up until he's fairly decisively beaten in the field, right?
Hmm.
Uh, but along those lines, right? Since we have the map of the South pulled up, uh, actually Sasha's the one who pointed this out to me. The rail line, right? There's a rail line that supplies the units around Zaporizhia and Kherson. Kherson. Sorry, I always have a hard
Oh,
KH
don't
and
worry.
K.
You have American pronunciation capabilities. I wouldn't expect much more. I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
I'm sorry. I'll use my superior Greek pronunciation skills to help you out. So yeah, it's Kherson and Zaporizhia.
Yes.
Those are the
There's
places.
the units in Kherson and Zaporizhia are Zaporizhia,
Zaporizhia,
whatever.
Zaporizhia.
Zaporizhia. They're supplied by an east-west or west-east rail line, right?
Yes.
They're not actually supplied out of Crimea primarily,
Oh
which
no,
is a
no.
bit
It's
weird.
that's why like the Russians like expended so much like trying to secure this corridor. It has these rail lines here that help them supply their forces. They also have the north-south rail line from Berdyansk to Plohoy. Uh, Polohi. I don't remember exactly how you say that one. But all these like rail lines tend to like move. They move through the major cities like Tokmak, like Melitopol, and then the rail line to Mariupol isn't as clear because it goes through Volovhanka and it goes very close to the front. But yeah, they have these rail lines that tend to be really important for not only moving troops but supply them throughout the region. So losing any of these rail lines basically means automatically that you kind of have to give up Kherson or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's sort of, if you look at from the area from Berdyansk to Temrivka, right? Still mainly the pronunciation.
From Berdyansk to
Berdyansk to the Ukrainian Haldom, Temrivka, Temrivka,
Temnivka
Temrivka.
here. Yeah. Wait. Let me. So this from Temnivka to Berdyansk. This area.
Yeah, It's not exactly, but you, how should I put it? It's very softly held, right? There's not a lot of unit density there.
No, because the Russians there are banking on the fact that there aren't that many good roads, highways, and like it's a really open. So the Russians are really banking on the attack coming from Ohrichiv, where the Ukrainians could utilize the highways that move from Plohoy towards Berdyansk, and of course the highway to Melitopol. So I think that's what the Russians are expecting, which okay, it
Mhm.
makes sense, but also it makes sense that the Ukrainians know that, so they might try
Exactly.
something alternative,
And
like an
they feel like
attack
this sort of,
from Novosilka, Velika Novosilka. Someone says that I should link
oh yeah,
the image. Let me do that. There you go, chat. Okay, yeah. So you thinking that if they're gonna, if well, they'll probably. I think they'll probably attack in the south, but you're expecting a big attack from like I guess Vuledar towards Volofanka and something like from Velika Novosilka south. Uh,
uh, more just speaking the general direction from Temerivka or Potovka towards Berdyansk.
hmm So something like
It's going to be a bit wild, right? Because it's basically open territory. Uh,
yeah,
but you're
there
also
aren't that
dealing
many
with
big roads
mechanisms.
here in this area from Demivka. Like they'd have to go quite a while before they run into any major settlement either. But they could reach the railway lines and the H08 highway, and that could be pretty substantial. So the Russians, even though there are no like major roads or settlements, they still have to like hold on to this area because it provides a buffer.
Yep. And it's also if you know the maps by Brady Afric, I think.
Oh no, there's so many people that I don't know about. Keep in mind, like I kind of started like giving my slightly unqualified opinion on shit like basically like last year. So it's not like I've been around the block. Um, who drop me a link if you can. Maybe I'll
Um,
follow them or something.
I am looking for his database of map lines. Uh, oh yeah, this one, Russian field fortifications in Ukraine.
Sure, let me see. Oh yeah. I've seen this. Seen this. I have seen this indeed.
Uh,
Is it an
the
interactive map?
Russians are the Russians are a bit silly, right? They the line I'm pointing out, right, is basically undefended.
Yeah, it has the least
Or relatively.
fortifications. I know what you're talking about. That area isn't the most fortified.
So it's
Um,
sort of like a straight shoot towards Berdyansk, a minimal defensive positions, uh, and basically the entire Russian line from, or I guess through Melitopol is very exposed, right? Their fortifications are facing the wrong way.
the Melitopol direction. Uh,
Yeah. From Polhoy, Tokmak to Melitopol, to Novodimitrivka.
yeah. So you're talking about like this area, Kulapolye Poloy, like this. So
Oh
when you
yeah.
say they're
From
facing in
around
the
there.
when you say they're
Yeah,
facing in the wrong direction, you mean that like um, that they. How do you mean they're facing in the wrong direction? They seem to be facing like in the direction of the Ukrainians for the
they're
most part.
facing. So the fortifications, right? They're not protecting the most exposed part of the Russian line, right? Because if there's a Ukrainian push down towards Berdyansk, towards Berdyansk, everything in the vicinity of Melitopol is going
This
to be effectively cut off.
Yeah, so like even if they have the strong fortifications there, like it's pointless.
Yeah, and there's
That does
literally
make sense. Yeah, like it would make sense that they could like that the Ukrainians would focus on the weakest part of the line. Um, I mean, yeah, like there's really the main trade-off that the Ukrainians would be thinking about is, okay, if we are attacking, do we want to make use of more roads but deal with more fortifications, or do we want to go more off-road and deal with less fortifications? Good option given there by the Russians, but there's no world in which they will prefer to deal with more fortifications rather than dealing without roads. Dealing with less
Exactly.
roads is much more doable than dealing with the really harshest fortifications, because like jokes or not, like the fortifications specifically in the direction of Melitopol are like they aren't a joke, like they are like really they are really like
Robust.
dense compared to what the Ukrainians have dealt with in past offensives.
And actually, if memory serves me properly, right, some of the recent Ukrainian assaults, right, like of the last few days, were on the
Hmm.
fortifications of around the blue line, right, the blue lines.
When did they
So
attack recently? They attacked. They didn't they attack out of like stuff. Which one is this? Staromilivka and didn't they? Or was it in Hulapolye? Where was the this? Uh,
was
do
it?
we? I wish we had like a nice map that kind of overlaid the fortifications to what the front line looks like, because I bet the most of these fortifications are slightly further behind the front line. I think the attack was around Hulapolye. I think the probing attacks that the Ukrainians did were like somewhere in this direction, like this. Um,
Yeah, that sort of suggests to me that it's not actually the place where Ukraine plans on assaulting, right? They want to be sure that their guys are prepared to go on the offense, right? Making testing out their units to see if they're actually good at their jobs,
mhm.
see if the training paid off, while also making sure that the Russians are defending those positions, right? Because if you launch a preparatory attack, whoever's the local commander is going to be thinking, oh, well, looks like there's a brigade or battalion across from me right here. I should be pushing my guys to defend that line and, to, I guess, to head off a potential offensive.
Yeah, and there's another benefit. If you're going to do probing attacks throughout the line, basically neither your guys nor the Russians will know exactly where you're planning on attacking. So
Exactly.
it keeps kind of everyone on their toes. And if you kept like probing the same place over and over and over and over, um, well, you either wouldn't get that much information in the place where you would actually attack, or you would get too much information on the place that the Russians would then expect you to attack. So probing all over the front makes a ton of sense. It isn't like an insane thing to do. It just makes sense. Sure, like the Russians get to have their like Twitter successes. Oh, we beat back the offensive every day. It's like, okay, like I don't get this. Like they say, oh, we beat back this offensive, we beat back that offensive, and I'm like, okay, dude, like we'll know when the big one comes. We all will know. It's not gonna be like third-rate news. Uh, in our Twitter feeds. Like I can't understand this like idea that yeah, it's gonna be like fucking like Mr. Nobody that's gonna like break the big news. Uh, like I don't fucking get this. That's why I've adopted this attitude of like, sure, I look at my feed, but I don't say anything about everything. Like I won't.
Not everything matters.
Yeah, not everything matters exactly. I'm not gonna just like keep talking, like keep running my mouth. Like I guess it will. I feel like it also hurts my credibility if I like constantly talk about every little thing as if it's a huge deal. Like I can't understand the people who like pump out like a ton of stuff and almost none of it matters in the grand scheme of things. Like I can't
Yeah,
I can't be like that. I can't like waste my time in that way, you know?
it's way too much work.
It's way too much work and it's pointless ultimately. Like sure, okay, you build a nice Twitter following, most of which is like basically like has the attention span of like a 6-year-old. And nobody ever really cares that much about what you gotta say in the end, because you're gonna say everything all the time. I remember when like people were talking about every like little counterattack that Ukraine would do, like when before the Kharkiv offensive, like everything in when they were probing around Kherson, when they were like when there was some fighting around Pisky, like these places. People would be like every little counterattack would be like, "We've shattered the Russian lines. Everything is about to be over." And I kept saying, "No, no, guys, wait. I'll make sure to tell you if something big happens. I'll be the first one to like say with happiness that, oh yeah, this attack succeeded. This attack like wasn't anything big." And yeah, when the Kharkiv offensive launched off, I was justifiably excited and said, well, this is what a breakthrough looks like, guys. It isn't like the, oh, little trickle of nothing all day long. Like, I don't know if you remember when that happened, like how much different the media environment felt.
Exactly. It was very took us by surprise. Actually, wait, I'm gonna answer Bluestone's question.
Hmm.
Hi, Bluestone. So, so yeah, technically, it's yes and no for your question, right? Uh, Motorized units have a very hard time fighting in muddy terrain, right? Because tires and wheels, or tires, wheels, and mud don't go well together, right? But when you have mechanized units, they can actually go through mud pretty well. They're more likely to get bogged down, but if you talk to like tankers or IFV guys, they're like, no, we can do mud perfectly well. It's fine. It kind of sucks to clean, but we're more likely to get tracked, but we can still advance, right? Uh, but the hard part is having supply lines keep up. But if you're going to be shattering the Russian lines, right, they're going to be either have to flail offensively, right, to try and dislodge you from their supply lines, or they're going to just pull back and open up the lines for you anyway, for your logistics to come through, because your logistics are going to be necessarily wheeled instead of tracked.
Yeah, so it is something that like we would have to expect like the in order to be like super worried about something like this, we would have to expect the Russians to fight kind of like the Ukrainians did in the early war, like kind of deciding that doesn't matter if we get cut off, doesn't matter if like doesn't matter if people are around us or behind us, we're gonna keep fighting, and expecting then the Ukrainians to like run their supply lines dry or not be able to move them like without help. But this is not how the Russians have acted when they feel their front like crumbling. Um, when it was,
Exactly.
yeah, like what you would expect is that that if they shatter the lines, the Russians might move back to the next defensive line and just give up everything on the line that got shattered. And something
Exactly.
else that you can also expect is that, yeah, but back to what you were talking about like motorized versus like mechanized units. Yeah, mechanized units tend to move slower. Both mechanized and tank units move slower than motorized units, but they tend to deal with terrain easier, like mud or like rivers. They tend to be able to better deal with them because they have more engineering, they have more equipment that can deal with harsher terrain. um, but right now it's summer, so it does make sense why the Ukrainians waited. It makes sense because they got more equipment, but it also makes sense because with
Yeah,
the summer
it's
weather they'll have to deal with less mud.
mhm. Especially since their units are more mechanized now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They got. I mean, we're gonna see some. No matter what happens when this offensive kicks off, we're going to see some really insane scenes. Like I know it. We know we're gonna see those fucking Slovenian T-55s fighting alongside like Bradley's MRAPs. Like it's gonna be the most like cartoonish fucking like battles we've seen this entire war. Like in terms of equipment, it's just going to be like people are gonna be fucking ecstatic the entire time. I know it. Like no matter what happens.
like a War Thunder wet dream.
Yes, yes, exactly. It's like people have the stuff that people were arguing about like 10 years ago, like day to day, we're gonna see all the hypotheticals play out. Oh yeah, dude, what happened if we we got a Bradley to fight with a T-72, and then we're gonna actually see it in more like in a more realistic like scenario than what played out during like the fucking war in Iraq.
And it's actually that sort of gets to like a your observation about the Russians fighting in a sense like when they realize their supply lines are cut off, they tend to withdraw instead of hold them friendly, right?
Hmm.
The Russia's officers, right? There's a weird like juxtaposition between they know the basics or fundamentals, right? Fighting when your supply lines cut off is bad, so you should withdraw. While it's also like grotesquely sloppy.
I mean, that's been the motto of the Russian war effort so far. Grotesquely sloppy. It's like the whole situation with Ukraine. I mean, I think isn't there like basically consensus now that like if they had gone full on to attack in 2014, they could have probably like
Oh,
won that
just
war.
shattered the Ukrainian
Yeah,
army, right? The Ukrainians only had like 50,000 guys who were even decently competent, and even then they were getting their backs blown out.
yeah. Like but they gave the Ukrainians every conceivable advantage on Earth and attacked in a way that was completely ass backwards from the very beginning. Even though they caught the Ukrainians slightly off guard when they moved in, like the way they did this was so sloppy, like in every respect. That's why people were laughing so much in the beginning. Uh, it took some time to settle into like a static war, but goddamn, like this the adage of that Ukrainian soldiers, like we are so lucky they're stupid. Like it rings true every day that this war continues. We are lucky they were stupid. Like holy fuck.
Exactly.
Oh man, no, it's such a weird thing in general. Like I, nobody kind of imagined it. I guess some people did, but it's such a weird war. I mean, I didn't expect that this war to happen. I didn't even pay attention when I started paying attention to like more like modern military stuff when it came to Afghanistan, like the American pullout from there. I did
The
some
fucking
stuff. I
train
tried
wreck
to pay
there.
attention day to day, but when this was happening, I started paying attention in like I guess early January of 2022 is when I started actually noticing that shit was going to happen.
Yep, that was that was actually a good time to jump on the wagon.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I avoided a bunch of brain rot, and now I have a good head on my shoulders. Like, holy fuck. There are some people, like, online who have, like, completely broken brains. And by broken brains, I don't mean they're, like, dumb or anything. It feels like they make the classic mistakes of, like, applying the feeling like because they've seen war before, they can judge how the next one will be. So essentially, like
Yeah,
every time, like getting the wrong understanding for the next war and fighting, like and like I don't know how do I describe it. It's like the people who talk about this war like it's Desert Storm, or talk about
oh,
this war
yeah,
like it's 1991. People say, "Oh yeah, it's gonna be like a ranged battle between leopards and T-62s," and I kept saying, "Well, no, because you aren't fighting in a desert anymore. There's tree lines in between you and little hills. You can't really expect to have a sight line more than a kilometer, and also there aren't that many tank battles." And people like still act like, oh no, dude, it's gonna be major tank battles that are gonna win this war, which just isn't really the case. I mean, tanks are super important in what they do, but it's not tank battles that happen. It is mostly like infantry battles with support of tanks. It is more
Mhm.
reminiscent of like a wars like or battles in World War I than it is. I know this sounds weird to say, but than it is like in Iraq, even though
Actually,
both are like different, of course.
this is probably going to give us a lot of whiplash, right?
Yeah.
Uh, we're expecting. Well, I should probably should like caution against because we got sort of gotten to a World War I mentality because the last 8 months have been relatively static.
Hmm.
But as soon as the NATO units are actually getting into the field, right, it's gonna start like becoming a rat race, right? Because the Ukrainian officers are gonna be pushing their guys hard and fast, and the Russians have been fighting statically for like, well, what, close to a year now, relatively
Yeah.
speaking.
I
They're not going to be they're going to be scrambling to catch up, right? To shift guys around, to plug gaps. Uh, their units, I don't know, go back to the Germany map. They're not going to
Their
be.
units in the south are in a better condition than the ones that have been like
Yeah.
severely treated. But still, I mean, I really I really wonder which Russians we're gonna see when this thing kicks out. Will we see like the Russians that fought in Liman? So like we're almost encircled, but we're gonna keep fighting until it's not possible to fight anymore. Or will we see the Kharkiv guys? They broke our lines. Yeah. So what now? Let's. What's the next place we can run behind? Oh, it's Oskil. Let's go to Oskil. Oh no, they moved past that. Okay, let's go to the Zerebets. Or like it really is like for me, it's an open question as to what units are we're gonna see, and also to me, it's an open question as to if the Ukrainians are gonna be able to utilize everything they've learned, and they're gonna be able to like deal with minefields and fortifications in a manner that will allow them to actually shatter Russian lines. I really I feel like this whole thing is like there's so many possibilities, you know?
Uh, Actually, the possibility that I'm leaning towards is I don't want to say a full collapse of the Russian line,
Mm-hmm.
but actually, I kind of want to say a full collapse of the Russian line because like they are losing their most aggressive guys, the Wagner units, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the regular Russian units are extremely resigned to their fates, right?
Yeah, as we said, like war by inertia. Uh,
Yeah, they don't want to be there.
I mean, fuck no. Why would you like give up your cushy job in the army to like go fight in Ukraine?
Exactly, right?
Like, yeah.
Uh, so when if the Ukrainians, I guess, push towards Berdyansk and they encircle the guys in Bakhmut, uh, that really just gives the Russians the excuse, or Russian army regulars, the excuse they need to leave, right? Because
Yeah,
hey,
yeah,
if
yeah.
their supply lines are cut off, they have no reason to be there. They can just withdraw without getting too much flack for abandoning their positions or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's also like there's just not like not a lot that they can do. Uh, I need to actually do you wouldn't happen to have any like knowledge of maps or units that the Russians have been keeping in reserve, right?
No, the main thing that I've seen is like Rohan was like Conrad was saying that like um that the Russians do have reserve units that they haven't committed. I've seen some people say that there's nothing. I kind of seen positions be like all over the place, and that's why I'm a bit more conservative than you in the sense that what I'm saying is, I am reluctant to make a concrete like prediction until the build up really like kicks off, until the Ukrainians start like seriously like building up their forces, and I want to see like okay, what will the Russian like Telegram and fucking Twitter channels say? Will they say that oh the Russians are responding by putting in more units, or will they say oh no they're building up and we're doing nothing? You know, like I want to see what happens when like the when the units like properly move into place and get ready, and how the Russians will react. And I think based on that reaction, I will tell you what I think will happen. You get what I mean? Is like I don't know what units the Russians might be able to materialize and place in position, or like how staffed their like lines are gonna be, and how they will react to the Ukrainian buildup. Will they be resigned to their fate? Um, will they be jolted to action? I don't know. That's why I'm saying that I want to see their reaction to the buildup first before I say my like last predictions on what's gonna happen. It seems it's gonna like kick off in the next couple of weeks anyway, so we're gonna find out soon enough, right?
Yes. Uh, Actually, sort of the Russians in the south have a very weird predicament, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because most of the Russian units, to my knowledge, that are being held in reserve are training around Voronezh and Belgorod in particular, right?
Uh,
So if there's
yeah.
they're going to be way out of position to respond to a Ukrainian offensive in the south. I mean, if they were training in Crimea in large numbers, they might be able to push up guys to, I guess,
But why are
plug the
they
giant.
training I don't get, like, is it because they have training facilities in Voronezh that they're training there, or like why? Why aren't
Yeah,
they closer? Because they don't want to get struck?
Voronezh is, to my knowledge, the largest training camp for the Western Military
Mm,
District. Right, that's where they
okay.
usually host their annual exercises. But it's like what, hundreds of kilometers to the north. So
It's far.
getting moving down to cover any gaps is going to take forever, right? And even those units are going to be a mixture of conscripts, reservists, recruits, and volunteers with like zero training, right? And veterans who are just fucking fed up with the war.
Okay, so it's a chill 300. Oh, wait, no. It's a chill 860 kilometers if you're using roads outside of Ukraine to go from Voronezh to Melitopol.
Yep. And the dumb part, right, was the Russians defend Kherson. They they actually used rail lines through Crimea
Hmm.
because actually I'm not sure. I'm not sure why they didn't use a railhead to drop them off at Melitopol. But
There are a lot of
they
perplexing questions that we're gonna find out in like 30 or 40 years. Really. There there's so many questions we're like confused about now in this war that we won't have answers for a very long time. I feel, uh, like honestly, like some like most confounding things. Just it has been an incredible time. One might say. Um, yeah. Yeah. So they're reserves. The ones that when you say the reserves, is like the ones that like Conrad has been talking about.
Yeah, those guys.
Mm.
They're very far away from the front lines. So as soon as Ukraine's offensive kicks off, actually, just moving guys around took them like a week. Yeah, sorry, shifting units from north of Kiev to Belgorod, it took like a week, right? To move them all by train.
All right.
Probably should have took them less time, but yeah, it's Russia, so inefficiency exists.
Fair enough.
Uh, so shifting them in to cover any gaps is going to take like forever, for all intents and purposes. And that's presuming that the Ukrainians don't actually strike their supply lines and railheads,
Hmm.
which they are now capable of doing with weapons like Storm Shadow, and even if they push forward HIMARS and GMLRS units, or actually M270s and HIMARS
Hmm.
and Mars. Shit, what's the German designation?
I don't know.
Mars 2?
Is it another like semi cruise missile thing? Like an air
Uh,
launched cruise missile?
no, no. The one, the German designation for the M270 multiple launch rocket system.
It doesn't matter. Like you just honestly considering the people who like watch my stream, you can just call them all HIMARS and HIMARS and be done with it. Like even though they aren't all
Yeah,
HIMARS. M2, but by the way, for everyone watching, the M270s and HIMARS are similar in the sense that they basically launch the same ordnance, but they like the HIMARS is like on a truck. It's faster and it's only have like half the tubes of the M270, right? I'm not wrong on that.
yep. You're right. You're right.
Yeah. I mean the M270 kind of like it makes sense. It doesn't have the same shoot and scoot capability than the HIMARS has, just because like it's on a faster platform. But
Yeah,
it's I don't know. It feels like it's underappreciated in terms of like it's like everybody talks HIMARS like all the time, but I don't know. The M270s are doing basically the exact same thing.
yeah. Bluestone's exactly right.
Mm. Yeah. See, that's the thing. Like, based on what you're telling me, what I would expect is that we're either going to see this like be a complete blowout that lasts like a matter of a week, at most, and just like be a complete collapse of the front because the Russians wouldn't have time to like maneuver things, or it's going to be like, or it's gonna start slow and go slow, and it's gonna be painful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's probably one of the two. Might be somewhere in between, but probably not, because it's either going to be wildly successful, or the Russians are going to nut up, shut up, and hold their positions.
Hmm.
Which I don't think they're going to do that, right? Because they just straight up not having a good time as it is,
Yeah.
and they're not even fighting against, I guess, a determined offensive operation, right?
Yes. So yeah, like for me, honestly, I even though I'm inclined to agree, I just like every like bone in my body tells me to be like cautious about whatever predictions I make about this. I want to be clear that like even as things stand right now, I couldn't tell you with certainty either way. I think that I would have to see how this whole thing like kicks off to be more to do more running commentary, you know. But I don't think it matters right now. Like the how do you say the dice cast? Like it doesn't matter. Like
Yeah,
we're gonna find out.
exactly.
Yeah. Like any discussion now is just like speculation before the like I don't know big big championship.
Before
Let's
the
say.
thunder starts.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we are in the quiet before the storm right now. It's like it could start at any moment. So hey, I mean, we're about to witness the biggest, like, probably biggest, like, battles, biggest military operations since fucking Iraq. So,
Yep.
and maybe see.
Largest.
I mean, the wasn't Bakhmut the biggest battle in terms of like personnel in the 21st century, or has there been a
Actually,
bigger
I
one?
think that might be the Battle of Mosul, right?
Mosul.
Because the coalition at Mosul had like 100,000 guys
Mm, yeah,
versus
okay,
like
then that's more reasonable then.
5 to 10,000 ISIS guys. Ooh, wait, can I say that without getting Twitch banned?
The saying ISIS?
Yeah.
I don't know. But I don't think saying the word ISIS like is ban worthy.
Okay. Because I don't know. I had for a YouTube introduction, right? I had Dash. I'll say that instead because that's very ambiguous. A Dash propaganda video, and YouTube didn't like that
Oh
at
yeah, I mean
all.
that makes more sense, but we aren't doing like propaganda for him. We're just kind of like discussing them, I guess. It's yeah, no, I don't think so. I guess it's the same way that like you could talk about Nazis on Twitch, but you probably couldn't show like a Nazi recruitment video. I guess that's where you draw the line. Um, yeah, no, it's an interesting environment. I don't think I have like enough attention on me to like get like anything more than like automated bans for stuff. So anyhow, I wouldn't expect like any like huge problem. And if something does get me banned, okay, like what did we have? What did we lose? Like I'm mostly on Twitter anyway. But it is nice to once in a while stream and have like 10, 15 people watching. It is nice. Because
You got to boost your numbers.
yeah, yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I could, but the thing is, like, right now, I don't have the time to, like, properly get into it, you know, because it's just that I started in, like, such an inopportune moment. Why did this war start now? And couldn't it have started, like, a couple of years later so that I had the time to, like, properly... Yeah, like, I should be, like, sending angry emails, about them, like, giving it a pause until I'm, like, it's convenient for me. Well, yeah, no, it's because I got all the work with and all the stress from the master that like I tend to like kind of shut down and not properly spend the time I want, like not only doing this but doing other hobbies that I've like left a bit on the wayside, like my exercise, my like judo that I used to do a lot, fucking modding for Hearts of Iron, which I also like to do. Um, Maybe I'll catch up with more stuff during the summer because now I'm getting out of like the harshest part of the master, and I'm getting into writing my thesis, which will allow
Oh
me
yeah,
more
what's your thesis
flexibility.
on?
Oh yeah, it's actually kind of topical. What I'll focus on is like regime stability in failed offensive wars. So specifically looking at dictatorial regimes or authoritarian regimes and how they cope with losing an offensive war. So not looking at something like Nazi Germany, for example, where they got occupied, but looking at things where like it either had regime change or nothing happened. So say like basically asking the question, why could Saddam survive the Iran-Iraq war, but the Argentinian junta didn't survive the Falklands War? So, asking
Interesting.
this as a question and trying to find indicators that could tell you how would a regime survive or not, like given a failed offensive. What are the things that could make it so that it survives or doesn't? Is there any like consistent like through line between those that failed as regimes and had to collapse and those that didn't? That's basically what I'm gonna be focusing
Uh, ooh, uh, Actually, you know that one video,
on. Which one video?
the one where he was in front of Saddam was in front of Parliament, and he had all of the major political figures in front of him, and then he just read off a list of names.
And it got him. What was it? Like executed or sent to prison? Uh,
Yeah, that one.
so do you allude to it being like a matter of like harshness and internal control? Um,
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm kind of expecting to find. Like regimes that are like fast, loose, and populist may not be able to survive a failed offensive war, like like the Argentinian dictatorship was, or like, while it wasn't an offensive war, like how the Greek junta was. Like after 1973, I don't know if you know much about it, but like after the student protest at the Polytechnic University of Athens, the junta was extremely unstable. There was a counter coup by hardliners, and that only lasted for a year because when the Cyprus emergency happened, the junta couldn't cope with it and it just like collapsed and it gave the reins to the civilian government. So like I think that it has to do with like in like the regime already being unstable. And I was inspired to do this because I saw a lot of people saying that Russia would like collapse in a matter of like politically collapse. I mean, like 1917 in a matter of like weeks into this war, because it was going badly. And I like people kept talking about 1917 and as if they didn't really understand what happened in 1917, why Russia collapsed in 1917. Like what? Like if we were expecting Russia to collapse now, like it did in 1917. Oh, it's okay. We only have like what, a famine and maybe like 5.8 million more casualties to go. Uh, is that what we're hoping for? Like you see, like I don't get why people like act this way. Like they just like say shit. Yeah, so that's why I didn't expect Russia to like just collapse in the first weeks. I said that like this was like maybe like a week in. I don't know if you know Xander Hall is just like a lefty YouTuber. I talked to him and I had like this idea back then. It was like I think it was like the either like the 1st of March, 2nd of March, something like this. And I said that, yeah, I'm not expecting this war to end soon. It could last months, if not years. And he asked me, do you really believe it could last for years? And I said, well, I don't know. I can't tell you. It's still very early, but, it's a really big thing for it to just be like over in no time. Yeah.
It's definitely not gonna. It's still Russia, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's still that's the thing. Like I've said this before, but like in when there's a war involving Russia, everyone loses. Russia loses, everybody else loses, nobody enjoys these wars. Every time. It's like every time everyone ends up being unhappy. Like no one's happy when there's a war involving Russia. Want to look at the Crimean War? Want to look at World War One? Want to look at World War Two? Nobody ends up happy. No one wins. Everyone loses. It's so fucked. But like nobody comes out thinking, "Oh yeah, that was a pleasant war with Russia." Come, like, it's so bad. Like, you want to talk about the Chechen wars, want to talk about Georgia, Afghanistan. Every time, it's unpleasant for everyone involved, especially Russia. The wars they win, it's unpleasant. The wars they lose, it's doubly unpleasant. Like every fucking time. It's just like every time you just have to ask, why are we doing this shit? Why? Why? Like have we not learned? We can't have a victory that is like painless. Maybe what like Georgia was the only time I can think of. Want to see the fucking the Winter War? Yeah, we won, but like at what cost?
200,000 KI.
Yeah,
What the fuck?
fucking incredible. Just like all around. Ugh, Jesus Christ. Yeah. But no, like trust me, like the oh, something that I did want to pick your brain about, like because we are gonna get close to like 2 hours. I wanted to ask you a little bit about what you think about like Turkey and Greece. Because I've seen you
Ooh.
like comment offhand a couple of times, but
Oh,
mostly your attitude towards it is like, oh guys, please, let's not.
yeah, that's sort of my answer, right?
Yeah.
I I know there's like a lot of history there, right? I don't.
Oh yeah,
I,
really?
first, both are allies, so I can't pick sides, right?
Yeah.
Even though I I know there's like the inclination to say Turkey's doing bad, right? But it's like Turkey and Greece, they both act like countries that know what they want, if you know what I mean, right?
Hmm.
There's a very sober self-interest.
Yeah, that is a fair assessment. I like explaining it as okay, guys, we got a good thing going here. Let's not ruin this. Like you're gonna do some jingoism and you're gonna win some votes. We're gonna do some jingoism. We're gonna win some votes. Why ruin a good thing? When you got it.
Exactly. You
Like
guys work better together.
yeah, it's a mutually beneficial animosity in terms of like for our politicians at least. Not it's not happy for like the rest of us getting anxiety attacks on like every couple of weeks. Like fucking I don't know if you remember the whole situation with Oruk Reis in 2020 where like the exploration ship was in like Greek territorial waters. Uh,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and
that one.
and like like back then like a couple of like a frigate of ours collided with a Turkish one. Like
Wait,
when
really?
yeah, no, they straight up collided. And people were posting on Twitter is like, "Oh, no damage. Ours wasn't damaged. No, yours was damaged." And I was sweating bullets, like saying, "Oh God, this can't be
This is
the way it goes."
this
This
is the
can't be
dumbest way
it.
possible to start a
It's
war.
so dumb. Oh my God. But yeah, like here's the thing, right? Like stuff that you wouldn't expect. Like Greece wants like it's the most major sponsor of Turkey getting into the European Union. And the
Mhm.
reason why we are the major sponsor is because we know that if they get into the European Union, we'd have to delineate all this shit and it wouldn't be like combative anymore. Uh,
Yeah, it would be mutually beneficial for
yeah.
everyone, right?
It's
Especially
like
since
keeping your enemies close kind of deal. It's like we want them in the EU because we know that would be a check on like their behavior. Um, yeah, I don't know if you've heard me rant a couple of times about like Greece and Turkey and like the way they build up their militaries and equipment and stuff.
yeah,
It's like Greece right now, I think, as a part of as a percentage of GDP, spends the most in NATO.
NATO, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think
Uh,
we spend even
in
more than
Turkey,
the U.S. It's definitely more
it,
than
it,
Turkey as a percent of GDP, but Turkey has a much bigger
yep,
GDP than we do. Has like
yeah.
800 billion. Yeah.
You guys both have like large economies. Turkey's is larger because population is larger. Their economies are, I don't want to say I'll say relatively healthy
It
compared by
yeah.
Western standards. I
We
don't want to
have
say the
unhealthy
Greece.
economies in different ways, is what you could say.
Exactly. Greece's finances are kind of shit, but uh,
That's an understatement, but yeah.
Turkey's Turkey's manufacturing is still catching up. Even though actually, Turkey's effective. You know how everybody's sort of saying that Turkey's ruining its economy.
With the devaluation of the lira and the very big brain strategy of like cutting interest rates when you have an inflationary crisis.
Yeah, actually it's actually one of the cleverer moves that Turkey's pulling, right?
I want an explanation on that one.
Because when you weaken your currency, right, especially relative to like the EU, Turkey is they are a Western country, right? This is something that most Europeans tend to like forget and like
Yeah,
decry, right?
yeah,
It,
that
it,
would be fair. I mean, especially like in the neighborhood of like it's the
exactly.
same way that I wouldn't say that we're much different than like Greece, Hungary, and Turkey. Like it kind of feels similar. Sure, like maybe the Hungarians feel a bit more European, but like politically, they're not much different to Turkey. And while we politically may resemble more like a Western European country, like our corruption and like fucking press is firmly in the same category. So the only like true like objections one could bring are like geographic, but no, it is technically a part of the Western Bloc. Yeah,
And when we tend to forget that part, right? That
yeah,
Turkey's population is very well educated, right?
yeah. Of course.
So the Turkish government is effectively trying to steal heavy industries from Europe by decreasing or actually increasing what is it? Increasing or decreasing interest rates? I don't know. Technically I studied economics, but I can't remember what Turkey's doing. The devalue.
So when you hike interest rates, you slow down borrowing, and so you essentially reduce inflation. If I'm correct, but if you have lower interest rates, you go more. It slows the economy. Yeah, it goes when you have like lower interest rates, more people will borrow, more money will be spent, and you're probably gonna have more inflation, assuming you aren't like the U.S., which is like super special.
Yeah. So in devaluing the lira, right? They're encouraging domestic investment, right? But they're also trying to steal heavy industry away from Europe, especially now that there's a gas crisis in Europe
Yeah, so
because of Russia. Right?
they also managed to like build up like an export, like a military MIC exports.
Yeah.
The only one who's really hurt by this is like the regular like Turkish worker, who honestly I don't think Ankara could care enough about. So
They're making the Turkish government's making this sort of sober calculation that in the long run, right, Turkish workers will benefit more if they pull in like auto industries out of Germany, other heavy industries out of Germany, right?
mhm.
Because Turkey has a stable gas supply through Azerbaijan and Iraq and Syria, right? Stable oil, stable gas. So they're betting that by attracting foreign capital to Turkey, they're going to see a massive increase in GDP growth. But effectively, they're going to be filching valuable industries out of Western Europe into Turkey, right?
Hmm.
Because they have the necessary building blocks in place. They just don't have the capital or the foreign companies that were interested. And technically, actually, this it's already starting to show fruits, right? Because there's a bunch of even American companies that are leaning towards investing in Turkey rather than Western Europe, and I think also Japanese companies.
Yeah, I
So,
mean
well,
they are an up and coming economy for sure. Ignoring like the weird fiscal management. They have a growing population, like it's a big country. They have all these benefits. Like Greece is a like an old and tired kid on the block. Like we aren't going to grow like Turkey is gonna grow. And the thing is that like as long as we don't have to ever deal with Turkey militarily, um, nothing really can threaten Greece. And I hope that eventually we reach a point where Turkey isn't a military threat, so that we can actually reduce our military budget. There is really no reason why, like, if the rest of Western Europe is like so like demilitarized, there is no reason why we should be fucking carrying them. Like, what the fuck? Why does Greece have like more tanks than like France, Germany, Britain, Spain, or like all put together? There's no reason.
yeah, it's very sort of obviously unbalanced.
Yeah, like we've kept everything. You know, like literally everything the Americans have given us in terms of heavy equipment since the 50s, we've kept. Like we've
Yeah,
kept it in running order. Like we've even kept like West German shit. Sorry, East
yeah.
German shit. Like we've kept everything. Like the fact that we have like M48 tanks like milling around in our islands. And the thing is, like, so has Turkey. Like, Turkey has also kept basically all its heavy equipment from back in the day. But they can also build their own stuff. We can't. So I think what do we actually know? I'm wrong. Someone pointed out that I was wrong on that. Apparently that we like build some like Leopard uh like two chassis, and that they go and get like outfitted in Germany afterwards. We can build the Leopard 2s, yeah. But like we don't have any like major like military industrial capacity. Uh, so honestly, yeah, it feels unbalanced. It feels like it's odd that Greece should have like, and honestly, I think that even now, even like how things are now, I don't think Greece should maintain such a big armored force. Like, there's no reason. Like, where the fuck
Yeah,
is like, you know what I mean? Is like I had compared it to like trying to sword fight in a closet. Like,
exactly. It's very you don't really need that much armor for archipelagos.
yeah, yeah, basically. Like the thing is, like it's even in our land border, it is super narrow. There are rivers and mountains and forests there, and the rest of it is like islands. So what you really need is air defense, a good air force, and anti-tank weaponry, and perhaps some IFVs to be rolling around. We don't have that many IFVs, but we definitely have a good air force, a good air defense. So we don't really need that many tanks. They're like just like they're just kind of a drag in terms of like maintenance. The problem is, of course, is that you can't really even sell them very easily. Who's gonna fucking buy M48s? Who? Who's gonna buy?
Yeah,
Yeah, who's gonna buy like 400 M48s that we have and like 200 M60s? Who's gonna buy those? Who's gonna buy Leopard ones? Like nobody. Nobody is. And we're still very reluctant to send anything to Ukraine, anything substantial, because even though we could probably get European funding to do so, like it would any competent opposition in Greece would attack the government if they did something like that. It would say
ooh,
that they
yeah,
are compromising they're
like security.
compromising our security. And the thing is, it wouldn't be the left that would gain from that would be the far right in Greece. Like,
No, it's just a smidgen worse, but not a smidgen. Very, very worse.
no. They aren't like it would shift the tone. Like the conservatives in Greece are really bad. However, the main thing they care about is like keeping the money flow going and basically running an effective kleptocracy and colluding with the media to keep control over the country and just kind of like larping as like a central European like kind of like autocracy, you know. That's the goal for the Greek conservatives. But the Greek far right is psychotic, like just incredibly psychotic. And if they ever actually came to power, whether it be the very nice new like ultra like fundamentalist like or like orthodox party that is probably going to enter parliament, or be it something like Greek Solution or Golden Dawn that we had back in the day. I don't know if you kept up with any of that. Like if any
Yeah,
of
I
them,
kept up with Golden Dawn.
yeah,
Yeah,
if any of them ever came to power, we would have like fucking trains running around collecting up minorities, and we'd probably have like a war again, like in like either with Turkey or Cyprus or whatever the fuck. Or even I don't know, maybe even Macedonia. Who knows? Like
oh
nobody's
no.
safe. Nobody's safe. So I want, no matter what happens, like if the cost, if the cost of keeping like far right of like out of government is to not send like that much equipment to Ukraine, I think I'm willing to pay that cost because it would
Yeah, that's
just
a
like
fair
create
price.
a massive problem. I mean, Greece can still like send some stuff that it would probably not cause that much ruckus for. Like, uh, the Greek far right did object to us sending the BMPs, the BMP 1A1 OSTs that we had, but really they weren't able to like capitalize that much, specifically because we were getting the Marders from Germany. Like, see, here's something that I don't get. America, if why doesn't the U.S. do like the big dick Chad move of like going to pretty much every single like Eastern European country that still has like T-72s and either and like other like former Soviet equipment? Why don't they say, okay, give that shit to Ukraine and we'll replace it with like older variants of US equipment, you know? I don't get, like, for example, what is it? Like in a lot of the Balkans, there are there's a bunch of like modernized T-72s that are really good. Like Cyprus, for example, has T-80s. So I really don't understand why like the US hasn't really stepped up on that front.
I guess the U.S. government's a bit. Uh, I, how should I put it? Not smart is
That's
a polite
smart.
way of putting it.
I think I think they're a bit like reluctant to like take radical action of any kind. Actually, not
Yeah,
radical action, but what they perceive to be radical action.
yeah. They don't. They are very reluctant to do anything that looks like it's going to rock the boat against Russia, right? I
Hmm.
mean, technically, they know for certain that we'd clap Russia very easily,
Yeah.
but they don't want to like they don't want to seem too pushy, if that makes sense.
Yeah. The thing is, like, the American public isn't exactly in the mood.
It's also weird, right? Because the American public, the federal government tries to get the American public behind a war that is not hard, right? Uh, Giving
Assuming
up
you have an
American,
attack on American soil.
I mean, not even if there's an attack on American soil, we can just make shit up. We
That's
can just
fair.
say Russia is trying to snuff out democracy, and most Americans will just hear Russia and start seeing red, right?
Hmm.
Because we still think it's like the Soviet Union because Americans are stupid. But
Okay, I mean, I think that this has shifted slightly because of the way that like the Republicans have shifted. So here's the deal, right? Like a lot of like Republican messaging now is like, Oh, like it's not anti-war. It's like pro-Russia in a sense. Like the this isn't our business. Like fucking stay out. Like you know what I'm talking about. Like so
Yeah,
a lot of
it's American far right, the
the
horseshoe
American
theory,
far
right?
right. Yeah, the American far right is like supposedly like talking in terms of like we are anti-war, which isn't anything principled. It's just stupidity. But the thing is, it could prove an obstacle. And then the Democrats, who are like smart enough to consider stuff like this, a huge part of their base as well is like really, really reluctant to engage in any kind of war. So I feel like that's why I say the
Exactly.
American public isn't in that big a mood for anything
Uh,
major.
100%, right? I guess the Biden administration in particular is very sensitive to, actually, I should say, terminally online public perceptions, right?
Yeah.
Most of the American public just doesn't give a shit. Uh,
Okay.
they, 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 they are stuck in their own worlds. If there's a war, normal people get excited, right? Because they get to make jokes and shit, like about dying in World War III or whatever. I don't know. We're very depressing in
Oh
that
my god.
sense.
Jesus Christ. Honestly,
But
what I want them to realize is that like one if the Dems win in like 2023, I mean what 20 this is 2023. If the Dems win in a few months, because the your elections are coming up, if the Dems win in a few months and like Biden like becomes president again, whoa, let's go, excitement. Uh, if Biden becomes president again, I feel like they should understand that they now have essentially a free hand in like properly supplying the Ukrainians, and that basically nothing will happen. Like if they just keep supplying the Ukrainians more and more, like that the Biden administration could present like a Ukrainian victory as a success of their own, you know?
exactly. But they also it's just that gap period between when or between I guess at the end of Biden's first term and the beginning of his second one, presuming he wins, right?
Wait,
They
so
have to
they
be,
are November 2024? They're not
yeah,
now?
November 2024.
Oh, that's when the election is. Why did I think?
Yeah, so another
Ah, yeah, it was
year.
November 2020, right?
Yeah, that was the last one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It wasn't 2019. Yeah, it was 2020. Okay, yeah, that makes sense then. So they still have, I guess they have because the campaigns have already started, and it just kind of feels weird because American election campaigns last so long. Like what the fuck, dude? Like we had our election campaigns lasted for what? Maybe like 2 months, 3 months, like the intense campaigning season. But now I see the Americans are already campaigning. You're campaigning a year before the fucking elections start.
Exactly. It's uh kind of I guess pathologically stupid, right? Because everybody wants to throw their hat in the ring and they want to gin up support for themselves and they want to take forever doing it. It's just the worst part is, right, they're not even like doing anything substantive, right? They're not advocating policies. They're just trying to like wave their hats and say, "Hey, I'm running.
Yeah.
These are my belief systems, but not actually my belief systems. Uh,
It's gonna
we
be
just want."
it's gonna be a rehash of 2020, but with even more culture war from the Republicans, and
Yep.
the Democrats just rehashing the, oh yeah, we are normal, please vote for us because we're normal. Um, God, like I hope they don't, like I hope the Dems don't fumble this. Like they have no reason to. Uh, I think they're still
Uh,
in a good position, unless something really weird happens. I think they're in a good position to win again. Because like if they fumble, if the Republicans like come into power and the war in Ukraine is still going, that could be bad.
Extremely bad.
Yeah. I've said this consistently, but like the most important aspect of this war, and perhaps one of the most under-discussed ones, is like foreign aid. Ukraine relies on foreign aid. That's like uncontroversial to say. Like for their ammunition, for like the production capacity, like almost everything. So like if America like somehow something happened, like the synapses all like fried, and America decided to say we're no longer part of this war, whatever. Like probably one of the most like beneficial like situations America has found itself in many years. If they decide to like somehow like fry their synapses and decide to go against it, it could like severely damage the Ukrainian war effort, and it would be so sad to see.
Not only sad, it'd be fucking stupid as
Yeah, it
shit.
would be. It would be fucking brain dead. Are you kidding? Like, there's no reason. It's like really no reason. And the Americans are spending almost nothing, and the almost nothing they're spending is on stuff that they have already paid for, and is just kind of fucking sitting there. Uh,
Yep.
I mean, the only thing that could change this whole situation is if somehow like Taiwan kicked off, which I don't see happening like right away. I would expect it to take a couple more years, maybe even a little more than that. Uh,
Even presumably Taiwan kicking off wouldn't, in practice, it wouldn't actually impact the aid that the U.S. is sending to Ukraine. But in not practice, in the fucking brain worms that Americans have, there would immediately be a mental pivot, right? They'd be
yeah,
like, "Oh, wait, now we have to support Taiwan, and we're gonna panic and shit." Even though, like, I don't know, Taiwan's not like being, it's not Korea, right? They're not prioritizing howitzer shells or
no, it
tanks
would be different.
or
It would be more like how leveraging the Air Force and the Navy,
exactly.
not the assets of the army. Because the whole goal would be like preventing a Chinese landing, right? Because if the Chinese land and establish a foothold, it's basically almost GG, isn't it? Like,
I don't want to say it's GG% because uh, it, on the ground, Taiwan, the PLA, sorry, not the Taiwan, PLA, the PLA's doctrine, right?
hmm
It's per the PLA, it's not very good, right? They're working on it, they're testing it and iterating on it more and more, right? But per their own estimates, right, they think they get their cheeks clapped in a normal ground war against the U.S. Which
okay,
I
yeah,
mean, it's
but
that's fair enough.
it's such a hypothetical, like a. This is kind of like the spherical cow situation, you know? It's like
Yeah,
when like the perfectly aerodynamic and spherical cows, like yeah, if we put them on a flat square map, like let them fight, yeah, America wins. But it's what battlefield are they gonna be fighting on? Like, would the U.S. ever like invade mainland China and try to occupy cities? Can you like imagine that? Because I can't.
I don't want to. Technically, I could imagine that it would just suck balls, right?
Yeah, like we're talking about like population wise, like China is basically impossible to occupy to a significant extent. And
I,
all the Chinese government would have to do is like not give up, in my opinion.
exactly.
So like it would be not Vietnam on steroids, like Vietnam on fucking cocaine, like just like the worst imaginable experience in the world. Uh,
it would.
like it would be the worst, and also the fact that they have nukes. Like fuck, haven't they been building up their nuclear arsenal to like a really significant extent recently?
Yeah, they are somewhere between creating 300 and 360 more ICBMs. I mean, technically, China's nuclear arsenal, if you could just compare the U.S. and China, right?
hmm
Technically, China's nuclear arsenal is actually stronger than the US's is,
In terms of
right?
like long range capability, because in numbers the
Well,
U.S. should still be like far ahead, right? Like,
I mean, yes and no, right? There's a bunch of dynamics that I guess you don't really think about unless you're like actually looking at it and like trying to uh, plot nuclear strikes and then compare that to whatever's left in your stockpiles, right?
hmm
Uh, on a pound per pound basis, right? The Chinese nuclear arsenal is capable of inflicting substantially more damage to the U.S. than the U.S.'s nuclear arsenal is to China, right? This is something that basically nobody has quite recognized yet, right?
what
Because
reasons would you say that is? Is it because like they have more like more potent weapons with longer ranges, or is it in terms of like what targets they have available?
It's a mixture of factors. But I guess the key ones that I'd sort of highlight are A, China's larger, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it has more cities. Now, I don't want to say it has more industry. Actually, technically, it has more industry, though its industries are technically worse, pound for pound. But that's not really saying much because it's still relative. Actually, if you're looking at it in terms of all of the countries in the world, China's industries are quite good. They're not like better than the US's is pound for pound, but they are better than India's, uh, like half of Europe's. They're not more efficient than Japan's, Germany's, Britain's, France's, or Russia's for that matter, but they are quite large and more efficient than most other countries, or developed or developing countries, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and their cities, they have a lot of cities,
A lot
and
of very big cities, yeah.
when you try to factor in, then you have to consider the U.S. nuclear arsenal within that context, right? America's nukes are relatively small compared to what they were in the heyday of, I guess, nuclear weapons sizes, right?
Back in the
Because
60s and 70s.
yeah, we still have the legacy of the Cold War. So America's nukes are designed to destroy other countries' nuclear weapons, but they're not designed to crater cities.
So
China's
they are essentially their plan is like strike military targets and like completely cripple uh, the armies, but not evaporate like cities of multi millions of people, while
yeah,
China is looking to evaporate cities of multi millions.
yeah, the Chinese military doesn't fuck around with the very cognitive heavy doctrine that the U.S. and Russia have been playing out for decades, right?
Mm-hmm.
The U.S. and Russia have been increasingly leaning towards developing more potent, technical terms, counter force capabilities. So the ability to strike silos, submarine bases, bomber bases with increasing, I guess, progressively increasing precision. The Chinese military sort of explicitly retains a doctrine of counter value, right? The counter value, just those two words put together, crammed together, that essentially means it's designed to clobber cities and industry.
Mm-hmm.
So they have their weapons are larger. Technically, they're getting smaller. So China could be moving towards a counterforce doctrine or posture, but right now it's sitting squarely in the counter value range, right? And even that's sort of a legacy of Mao saying, not saying, I can't quote him directly, but the gist of his thoughts on nuclear strategy are, why the fuck would I waste my time targeting somebody else's silos when I could just go straight to saying, hey, if you attack me, I'm going to flatten your cities?
Which is a
Because
way to go about it. Like,
yeah, it's very simplistic, but it works, right?
yeah.
Because if you're not going to be want to, I guess, engage in nuclear war with somebody whose first instinct is, hey, I'm going to kill your entire family if you do this. I'm not going to play your silly games of trying to make sure I can hit your nukes before your nukes hit my nukes.
I guess. And the thing is, like, there's probably gonna be a different like pain tolerance to like expected out of like these two countries. Like like
Oh,
if we're going back to like history of wars like in China, like let's be real, like millions of casualties have been a staple of them for a while.
actually, that sort of gets to a very complicated problem that is very understated, I have to say, in the sense that historically, China, the Chinese government hasn't given a fuck about its civilian population or its soldiers like at all, right?
Yeah,
They just
that's a
haven't
very
cared.
very uncontroversial like take. Yeah.
But in recent years, especially with their age pyramid leaning towards like the 40s and 50s and 60s, right?
Hmm.
Uh, the Chinese government has increasingly become concerned about the welfare of its populace without necessarily enacting measures like a social security system to actually care for its populace.
Yeah.
Uh, this was on display during, I think, what is it, Chinese peacekeeping operations in South Sudan. Uh, like there was a battle that Chinese peacekeepers had a few years ago with a bunch of rebels, right? Technically, the Chinese forces won that,
Hmm.
but two Chinese peacekeepers were killed. Just two guys, or actually maybe it was a woman and a guy. And all of China had sort of a day of national mourning for these handful of casualties.
Jeez. Yeah, but I think that like falls more into the one death tragedy, a million, like a tragedy. 1 million is a statistic kind of deal. I don't know. Like
It's
it's hard to say for me at least.
it's sort of I that might that's sort of the problem with that, right? It might be true that it's still the case, but it also might not be true, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, mm, yeah, no, it's hard to talk about. Something like I guess like a last meme before I go because I gotta go do some laundry before like it's too late. Um, I wanted to ask you, what do you make of like Republicans signaling towards like a peacekeeping operation in Mexico?
They're fucking stupid as
So
fuck.
so fucking dumb. Holy shit.
Oh God, it's hands down the dumbest possible thing that they could think of.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
like trying to stick your hand in a blender. Like, why? Why would you
it's
stick your hand in the blender? There's no reason. The
there's no good
blender
reason
is
for that.
sitting there, not bothering you at all. Just fucking keep your hands out of the blender. Like they're presenting like the situation in the border as if it's like a catastrophe of like unimaginable scale. But like, don't they understand how much worse they could make things if they do something like that? Like, what is
So
the
much worse.
thinking? What is the thinking? Like, what?
I think they are fucking idiots who are subsumed with an idea of American invincibility, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
They just think that they could get away with it without, even though, which is pathologically idiotic, right? Because
Yeah.
America's uh, the cartels, basically all of the cartels specialize in assassinations, right?
Mhm.
Uh, not just there's not just gunfights between various cartels and firefights over terrain and territory. Uh, they they are good at targeted violence. In America is a giant floating target. We like to, and over here we like to think that we can do whatever we want because we're the strongest and we can beat the shit out of everybody. And technically that's correct, but it's also very very incorrect because all the addresses and locations of basically every American citizen is publicly available, right? You can
Yeah,
literally
it is
just
a
log
it is a
in.
sort of like hubris in a sense. It's like you may know what you can do, but like you may not understand what others can do to you. You know.
Exactly.
Sure, like the cartels will never conquer America, but they could kill Paul Pelosi, right? Like they wouldn't have a like they wouldn't have just
Technically,
like it wouldn't be like a random guy like walking into his house with a hammer. It would be like a dozen guys with Kalashnikovs.
or like one or two guys with silenced pistols because America is stupid and you can buy oil filters on Amazon. Sorry, oil filters, air quotes.
Yeah, yeah, oil filters. No, yeah, no, they could end up having like a massive assassination campaign, and they wouldn't even really know how to respond. What do you do against that? Do you like make like the US a police state until you figure out what to do with the cartels? Do you like vaporize huge areas of Mexico like the Soviets in Afghanistan? What the fuck do you even do? Like what
They have
would
literally no idea.
Mexico also would never ever agree like voluntarily to something like this, would they? Like I can't
No,
imagine
why not?
like the
Actually,
oh my
the Mexican government, when they actually consistently, when the Mexican government hears that proposal, right, or similar proposals, uh, they explicitly tell U.S. politicians, fuck off. If you do that, we're going to be very mad,
Oh
right?
my god. Yeah, no, it's not. It's not. They haven't thought it through. Is what we can say. And I guess Iran was a bit different when the Americans were like was it again in 2020, right? When like they had killed Soleimani, and apparently Trump was
Yeah,
like 15 minutes from launching his invasion of Iran. And
exactly.
and
And that was
Milley had to show him that it would take a lot of troops or something.
yes.
Yeah, so like I guess that the like it has been kind of a staple of like recent like military like American military adventures of like kind of stumbling in a situation a little bit fast and loose.
Without thinking things through, yeah, that is 100% tracks.
Yeah, and the thing is, like with Ukraine, like the U.S. was much more reserved, and they were able to actually like provide, albeit slow, but like effective assistance. But like, I think I guess maybe it's a curse for the Republicans. Who knows? Maybe it's just them. They just don't think.
Yeah, that might be it. Because
Yeah.
the Democrats have their own problems in the sense that they tend to forget that the world exists outside of the US.
And
And
they
the
are more
Republicans,
timid, but the Republicans just do stuff that's just so dumb. Like you can't even compare, I guess.
we're stuck in this awkward position between forgetting that the world exists and knowing that the world exists and wanting to destroy it.
Yeah, I love you guys for it. You know what's the the worst part is that when you guys fuck up, like when you sneeze, the rest of us catch a cold. So
Very
so I
bad.
can't I the thing is like as much as I want to ignore American politics, I can't. Like I know how important it is for like the rest of us, and like if like even though like American politics might seem insane, and it is in a lot of
It,
ways,
it is in fact insane.
it isn't that
And
insane in my
oh, I
opinion.
mean, not in the smart insane sense, but in like the very stupid insane sense.
Yeah, no, the thing is like sure it's heading towards the very very stupid insane sense, like with the turn the Republicans have taken recently, but like I'm comparing it to like Greek politics. And like every time I've described to Americans what like Greek politics is like day to day, they are completely like lost for words. I mean, I don't think Americans could ever imagine like a Nazi party like gaining like 10% of the vote, and not having a senate, right? Like having only like the parliament, and being having representatives like directly, like having as much volatility is what I'm trying to say, like, right? And as much like political diversity, because like the US seems more politically diverse than it actually is, if that
Yeah,
like makes sense. Like a lot of people kind of like play sports when it comes to like their politics. Meanwhile, a lot of Americans tend to agree on a lot more things than they seem to on the surface. But it also like they seem like susceptible to like babies populism, like the kind of
yeah,
shit that we worked out back like 50 years ago.
exactly. Europe's problems are that its political parties are diverse and knowledgeable. America's problems are that our political parties are dumb as shit, but there's only like two of them.
Yeah, it's something that I had found really interesting. Like I saw this like there was this vote that took place in Congress, and it was like a motion to condemn socialism or something like that. That
Yeah,
like Republicans put forward, and something like a third or more Democrats voted for it. And to me, I don't care like what anyone's position may be on socialism. What really bothered me is like, how can you not realize that that this is like a bad faith motion? like something directly made for you to be targeted. And how do you not understand that the only appropriate response to that is vote united as a party in opposition to it? Like basically reject it categorically. But no, like I see like Democrats falling like for the oldest tricks in like dirty politics like books, you know? And
Yep.
like it's like the Republicans figured out that they can play dirty politics back like 15 years ago, and the Democrats have still not caught up to the fact that like the Republicans are playing dirty politics like a lot of the time. And the fact that like
Yep.
their dirty politics and their bad faith keeps them in the game when in reality they would have been out of the game if they played fair like a while ago. uh,
Yep.
like in Greece, we're used to nobody playing fair, so everybody has is already like knowledgeable about what like smear bills look like, what dirty campaigning looks like all this stuff. We all know what it looks like. We can see, we can smell a smear job from far away. So it like it always boggles my mind when I see them like completely miss shit like this.
We're this. They're just fucking stupid. I'm sorry.
Oh man.
They fall for the most obvious shit.
Yeah. It's like, oop, I stole your nose, and like, oh, my nose. What the fuck? How could you? Like,
Yep.
yeah, no. I honestly like the. I'll keep commenting on it because I mean, if anything, it is amusing. Anyway, I want to thank you for like coming on. It was a long time coming, having a nice long convo. And as always, I'll keep directing people towards you for like good and based opinions on
Thank you.
this conflict. I hope you. I wish you the best of luck with like with your platform and the consulting work
Thank you.
you're
Same your
engaged in.
way.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
good luck in the pieces.
thanks, man. Thanks. I mean, hopefully, I might end up like I'm gonna intern at a think tank, and maybe I'll end up, getting my own like brain dead takes in the broader conversation, in a few years. But yeah, again, like anytime you'd like to come on for more conversations, just let me know if something crosses your mind and you want to talk to my audience. They would all be receptive to it. And yeah, man, thanks for coming. Oh, he's someone's asking, does either of us have a YouTube channel? I do,
I
but I
have
just
the one
upload
for
VODs on there.
I have the one for Analytica Camless, but there's only two videos on it.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
you might any chance you could link that in the comments because I am still struggling to remember what my username and login are for Twitch. I think I might
yeah,
have
yeah,
got
yeah.
it called.
Just send it to me, and I will give it to chat. I'll link it in chat. Yeah, and thanks to the chat for sticking around. As always, we have the best convos here. It's
They're
always.
very good questions.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, man. It's also great. The other guy that I've brought on a lot of times, like Comrade. You might have seen him like maybe sometimes in my comments or sometimes in yours. I don't know. Comrade Robin Hood, I think is his name on Twitter. Who's like a British like military guy who is like an anarchist, and he has been around in Rojava, um, and he
Ooh.
trained people there. Um, Honestly, like if you ever want to have a cool convo, that guy would be right up your alley. Um,
Uh, we should probably have one as soon as the offensive starts.
oh yeah, no, totally. We're doing the live coverage with popcorn. I'm down.
Nice.
I'm totally down. All right. Did you? Oh, there you go. Cool. Let me let me copy that. There we go. All right. I linked that. Anyways, so I'm gonna go now. I'm gonna say goodbye to chat in a little bit, and thanks for coming, man. And anything else you want to
Thanks
shout
for
out,
having me on.
just go ahead.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, man. It was a
Oh
cool
yeah.
time.
If anybody here actually is interested in like writing any articles or pieces on something that is vexing on their minds, that they think, even if they think it might be crazy, right? Just follow the Analytica Camlist link. We take the world's most controversial ideas and write pieces on them, especially if they are probably relevant, right?
Hey, I mean, get. I have some people I could throw your way. You know, like fucking. There are some people that follow me that I think could absolutely write interesting articles and stuff like this. Like from Alucard, Skilos is another guy who follows me who I think would definitely like write really compelling stuff. And of course, my friend comrade. These three, I will try to probe them towards that because it seems worthwhile. Um, yeah. Again, once again, thanks for coming, and I'll see you when the offensive begins, man.
Yep. See you soon.
All right. See you later. Bye bye. All right, everybody. How are we feeling? Uh, cool convo, right? I maybe I should probably upload this because it was really good. I'll have to download it from Twitch votes though because I forgot to record it. Doesn't matter. It's fine. It's still cool. I'm really happy about this convo. Um, and we got still 8 people watching. Let's see who we could raid. And if you guys have questions, like, you better throw them my way now, cause we're gonna be I'm gonna be gone in a little bit. Let's see. Who can we raid? Da, da, da. Da, da, da. Oh no. There aren't that many people that I follow online right now. What is going on? Maybe Tiberius? What is he talking about? Uh, I don't know. Let me think. Mm-hmm. Sure. I mean, why not? Won't hurt. I'll I'll send you guys over to Tiberius. All right. My conservative friend, uh, who I have. You go there, make his life difficult. No, don't make his life difficult. Be nice. All right. Let me copy his name. Mm, all right. Let's go. Hop on. Hop on. Hop on. We're gonna double his viewership. Let's go. Let's go. All right. See you later, guys.